All right, well, the church bells are ringing, so it must be 6. Thank you all for coming. This is the first in a series of Planning with Purpose programming that we have scheduled at the library. Thank you to Ben and Steve for coming to do this for us. We're very excited. Next month, we're going to do a on-tour site of Majestic Bluffs. We talked to Cody. She's going to show us all of the different amenities that they have, everything from independent living all the way through to assisted living, care, and then the hospice section as well. And then I think everybody should have a handout if they're around of the different things that we have planned. May is going to be Medicare. We have estate planning in August. And then we're still working through end-of-life care, pet passing and grief. And then finally, we'll end the series with grief counseling in November. So things that we all need to deal with and learn. So we're happy that people are here and excited to learn with us.
Yeah. Well, Steve is working. I'll get to work here. Oh yeah.
Sure. Steve Wintz, Wintz Funeral Home, and I'm very happy that we are invited to come and participate in this, and thank you for the library for reaching out to us. Ben Polachek is a friend of ours that helps us with our pre-need programs and has these presentations put together and much more succinct than we could. So we invite Ben down for some of these programs to kind of just help educate and get kind of people informed about funerals and all different aspects. So we'll kind of partner up. If you have questions, go ahead and ask, and we can answer them here too. But with that, I'll let Ben take it over.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everybody. Whoa, come on. You got cookies in your mouth? Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
There we go. See, at the funeral home, you always have to answer back. Otherwise, things get really weird. So that's what I'm used to. But a couple of little notes here. This is just a perfect size of group. We have presentations like this, and I really mean this. If you have a question at any time, you're not going to throw us off. Throw your hand up. We'll talk about it. It's part of why I had you do that pre-program survey too, just so I could hear what's important to you. We'll hit on what you want to touch on, and then we'll just keep rolling. Okay. The last thing you want to do is just sit here and listen to me talk for the next 4 hours, right? That's a joke. No, the library closes at 8. They told me, so we got to get out of here. And I'm going to shoot for sure 7:30. This depends on questions and what we how we're doing on that stuff. But restrooms out the door. If you don't know that, and please help yourself. Coffee and cookies are there. So this is me. I'm Ben Polachek. Okay, it's a good Irish name, right? Just kidding. No, I'm a little Bohemian, a little Norwegian. So if you do have a question, please speak slowly and use small words because this is my heritage. No, but got a great family. I live back in Mankato, so I made the drive today. But I got my wife, Sarah. We've been married 24 years, and we have 5 kiddos, 21, 18, 18, 11, and 7, believe it or not. And my wife, she's just a saint. She's at home today. Had a little illness. She's a teacher at a local school district back where we are. So, but what I've done over the last 18 years is had this conversation, and what that is talking to people about their funerals. I counted it up. I've helped about 3,000 families, which is crazy for me. I can't believe it, but doesn't mean I've seen everything. It sure doesn't mean I know everything, but I have seen a lot. And so hopefully I can share a couple things of just what I've seen people go through when they're thinking about this and planning this. Okay. Couple just disclaimers right off the bat. Today's educational. I'm here to give you a lot of information, get you thinking about these things. You don't have to come to any conclusions today. I'm just going to share my experience and just some laws and different things. There's a lot of myths around funerals and cremation and how all this works. So I actually like to kind of shed some light on these things. It doesn't have to be dark and scary. It can be an okay thing. It's a natural part of life. So let's look at that. But the point here is nothing replaces you sitting across the table from someone you trust to maybe look at this stuff for yourself. We're all going to need a funeral someday. I don't know anybody who won't, so it doesn't hurt to look at these things ahead of time because it's going to help those people who are left behind. You know, maybe it's a spouse or son or daughter, whoever that person is for you. They're the ones that are going to be needing to take that ball and run with it. Well, how can we make it so that they know what to do? They have a clear track to run on. How can we make it easier for them? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. So here's my agenda. I got 8 things that you maybe didn't know about funerals. Okay, we'll talk about a planning guide, and what that is, it's a book that really, I think it does a good job of just putting together all the information that your family's going to need someday when they walk into the funeral home doors to plan a funeral, and then some odds and ends. So we'll wrap up with here. Okay, so when I think about, you know, the families that I've helped over the years, like I say, about 3,000 give or take, I just think of, it's important, I think, to go back to, why do we even do this? Why do we have a funeral? You know, culturally, we are changing. We are speeding up, and now I'm going to sound a lot like my dad. Things are, you know, boy, it seems like it's going to hell in a handbasket, right? It's going so fast. I don't always agree, but I'm starting to sound more like my dad. We are going a lot faster than we used to. And, you know, we like to be I want to be, you know, just text me the information. I can find anything on my phone in no time. We love speed, efficiency, and convenience, right? I can go to the drive-thru and get a meal in no time, right? I really like that. Or I could go on my app, and by the time I get there, they probably have my food. I don't even have to talk to anybody. I don't have to wait. I can just go get it, and out the door I go. Anybody else do that? I'm the only one. Okay, got it. All right. You guys have the internet here in Yankton, or is that just a new thing? Well, my you know, hypothesis here is that the convenience, the speed, the efficiency is trying to get its way into grief and funerals. And I don't always think it's helpful, because I think are some really important reasons why we do all this stuff. Okay, this is a diagram that was put together by Dr. Alan Wolfelt. He's done a lot of work. He's a psychologist and author, done a lot of work in the area of grief and funerals. And I think he does a good job. What this does, it just points us to why do we do all these different things? So just quickly, first off, the reality. There is a human need, I believe, for us to know and understand that a person has passed away. We are logical, rational beings, most of the time, okay? And there's just something about actually seeing that person where then the death goes from our head into our heart. We start to understand that this person has passed away. I can't tell you how many times over the years I've met with people, and they'll say, and this will be kids or adults, that'll tell me, you know, I didn't get to see that person before they did the burial, or I didn't get to see that person before they did the cremation. And in my head, they're actually still here. Like, they could walk around the corner here at any time. It's like I didn't quite get it. It didn't sink in that they really have passed away. I think there's a human need to do that. By the way, Wintz, you know, if we're going to do a cremation, they will allow the family to see that person one more time before the cremation. Always offer that. They don't charge for that. So just a thought. I think that's a really important thing for a lot of people. Never force anybody to do it, but it is an option. And you have that reality. I think that's helpful for a lot of people. Secondly is the recall, okay? We're going to start to now remember that person. We're going to tell stories. We're going to remember the impact that they had on our life. This is important, okay? We are valuable. I think human beings are valuable, okay? So it's important to stop and remember the life that was lived. You're not just a text message. You're not just a quick little blip on the radar. No, you lived a life that was worthy of honor. So we're going to stop and take the time for that. Just culturally, society. Did you know years ago, visitations and wakes used to be like 3 nights long? Okay, the body used to be in the home. Now maybe that's a little weird, but that used to be that way. When there was a funeral procession, people that were driving on the road, even if they had nothing to do with it, they'd get out of their car and stand kind of at attention while a funeral procession went by. Does that not sound like I'm talking about the 1700s? You know, it wasn't that long ago. But culturally, we're just moving so fast. It's like, it's got to be fast and convenient. The soul, I don't think is convenient. This takes time to go through this. The next thing we need is support. Okay, I think it's important. We don't grieve. We don't mourn alone. Okay, grief is something that we feel individually with those feelings, but then we need the support, because what that is, it's a public display. We're going to now get together. And I tell you what, it really means a lot to hear something from somebody. I lost my mom a couple of years ago, at the visitation, she was a nurse. Oddly enough, she went to school here in Yankton, nurses college here, many years ago. But I heard stories about her coworkers when she was a nurse at a nursing home, she got in trouble because she would give hospice patients root beer. And they weren't supposed to have too much root beer. It's like, give them root beer, whatever. And she got in trouble. I thought that was cool. I was like, that's awesome. I would never have heard that story if we didn't have a visitation, if I didn't get that public support to take the time and people to come and say, hey, I knew your mom. Obviously you knew your mom, loved her. I'm just sorry for your loss. There are no magic words, okay? The other thing to remember here, anybody ever heard someone say this? If you need anything, let me know. They never let you know, did they? Nobody does, right? Because we're Midwest. I don't want to bother you. I don't want to, impose on you. Guess what? We need the support. If I can encourage you to not be like a Midwesterner for a second, just go over to their house, drop off a hot dish. We don't have casseroles. We have hot dishes, right? Drop off cookies, whatever, and just get in there. They're hurting already. They need the support. Okay, go and do that. The other thing that if we don't have anything public, I think what that tells people is, hey, we're handling this privately, please stay away. If we don't have anything where there's a right time for us to come, when do you do that? When is the right and proper time to actually give that support? By the way, this doesn't cost a nickel. It has nothing to do with money. You can have a get together here. You have a get together at the park. I don't care, whatever. But have something, please, because that allows the family to heal. Next, expression. We're starting to express those feelings. I heard this the other day. When you express joy, it increases. When you express grief, it decreases. I think that's true. I think it's a good thing. And so I think just again, in our humanity, that's an important thing to have that human connection and say, hey, do you remember how awesome that was? And do you feel that pain? Isn't it true? When I'm at a really good funeral, there is laughing and there is crying, right? And you know what? It's really, really good. You're doing them both at the exact same time. It's kind of a funny, weird, you're just a big mess of feelings, but that's really the best, right? We're starting to express that, do it publicly, do it together, okay? This other one, meaning. We can't escape it. When we go to a funeral, we are asking ourselves, maybe not out loud, but in our mind and in our heart, we're asking ourselves some really serious questions. These are not the questions of what color is the Jell-O for lunch, right? These are the questions of what in the world are we doing here? What is the meaning of life? Am I leading a good life? Did the person who died, did they live a good life? These are big questions, okay? Funeral's probably not going to answer all those, but they come up, okay? So this is where, even in planning these things out, I've had people, I think, really feel good about being able to plan their service and then say, listen, this is what I believe, this is what I think, and I want to say that at the service, okay? Faith person, philosophy on life, whatever. You get to say that a lot of times in your service. My mom, she was a church person, raised me in church. She picked her songs, she picked her readings, okay? One of the readings was, in a nutshell, hey kids, don't argue amongst yourselves. Perfect, exactly what we needed to hear. I still remember that. I have it on my phone, okay? That was very helpful to us to do that. Last one is transcending, okay? We're trying to, as we go through this, we do get up and over our grief. And what this does, I think he does a good job, the psychologist I was mentioning, does a good job of just saying, there is now a new relationship that has occurred. Our relationship with the deceased has not ended, but it has changed, okay? It's one of presence to one of memory. It's still there, okay, but it will be different now. Our relationship also with our family is now different. That person has been taken out of it. And so now they're not in the middle of that. Now we're interacting differently, okay? Even the way our support network is, okay? That relationship is now different because we shared a common experience at the funeral. I'm not trying to make this a bigger thing than it is, but there is a reason that we do all these things, okay? I really think as a society, when people don't heal, I can tell you, I've seen this. I've seen people get angry. I've seen people get bitter. I have seen addictions. I've seen people in self-harm behaviors. I would think, I'm no psychologist, but I think because some of this stuff gets short-circuited, okay? There's a reason we do this, okay? Any questions on this slide? Questions, comments on this one here? We'll keep going. Okay. The first person who asks a question gets a free cookie, by the way. So, all right. So here's our top 8 list, top 8 things to think about. So now we think about a funeral, and now with that kind of in the background, well, what about your funeral? Okay. It's one thing to think about this in someone else. What about your own? And it's something I think we should remember. The word funeral is different. Our words don't mean what they used to mean. Nowadays, I've seen the word funeral really replaced with memorial, tribute. Anybody heard celebration of life? That's the most common one I'm seeing more now. That's fine. Really, we're talking about the same thing. All these elements usually have the same thing, where we're stopping, we're remembering the life that was lived, okay? We're trying to honor that person. We're trying to honor that person's faith or philosophy. We're trying to do that. And we're trying to get together for support. All those elements are in place, okay? And so this is where some people say, well, I know what a funeral is. I don't think I want one. And I think what they're getting at is the tone of that, where every funeral has got to be, we're all in black. We all have black umbrellas. It's probably got to be raining that day. Yeah. It's got to be a black, somber, event. It doesn't have to be that way. The tone is up to you. And a lot of people, it's like, listen, I lived a great life. It's been awesome. I want to celebrate that. I don't want it to be down and gloomy. I just helped a lady. She's actually going to have a band at her celebration of life. Okay. So if you happen to know her, in 30 years, you get to go to, and there's a band, and there'll be drinks and beverage. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay, so we're doing the church thing, but then we're doing that later. So, and here's the thing, your survivors are going to need to do something regardless. And this psychologist has said the same thing. Listen, they can heal at the funeral, or they can heal in the office of a therapist. Somewhere along the line, we've got to do that. We've got to heal one way or another. And ultimately, here's the thing, this is my family. I don't think you need to make a big deal out of me. I don't care. You don't have to have a parade for me if I die. But I care a lot about those people. I want them to be okay. So again, for us Midwesterners, where don't have to shine the spotlight on me, that's fine. But I do want them to be okay. I want them to heal and be taken care of through that. Okay? Questions, comments on this slide? Okay, we'll keep going. How much does a funeral cost?
Too much.
Whoa, now. That's a good one, yes. And I'm always curious, okay, and how much too much would you think a funeral is? Well, how much you would
I think anything over 8,000 is way too high.
8,000, okay. Can you do a funeral for less than 8?
I don't know, probably if you go cremation.
Okay.
But if you want the typical burial, probably not.
Okay. What do you think? How much does a funeral cost? What would your guess be?
12 to 15,000.
12 to 15, okay. 12, 15, I got 8. That's where we got to be pretty much? 10. I feel like an auctioneer.
Yeah.
Some sort. Yeah. Okay. Let me let you off the hook. How about this? How about 3, 7, 9, or 13? Okay, just so we can kind of get our arms around it. So 13 and 12 to 15. I mean, the numbers that you were throwing out there, that would probably be a traditional service with a casket and a vault. Okay. The 2 biggest variables with a traditional service are the casket and vault, because there's such a range of costs within those. So caskets, gosh, you could be anywhere from like 2,000 to 8,000 for a casket. Okay. Vaults, well, pretty much all the cemeteries around here require a vault for a casket. So, and they don't make one kind of vault, they make about 13 different versions of these. Okay, those go from about the same range, give or take 1,500 to about 10,000 for the different vaults. Okay. Now, are you going to heaven any quicker depending on the vault that you pick? No, okay, let me help you. No, that's not the way that works. But here's the thing, when the family's emotional, they're sad, and now they go into that room. I've had a lot of people tell me, I just felt like kind of doing more. I don't know, I felt like kind of, mom was the best, so I want to get her, that high-end type of thing, thinking that I'm showing my love to her by being willing to spend whatever. Here's the thing, if you've already picked it out, actually, and this is one reason why people do this, you actually protect the kids from overdoing it, okay? They don't even have to go in that room and pick out a casket or a vault. It's already done, okay? So yeah, for a traditional service, I usually tell people, gosh, you could be anywhere from like 11 to 18,000 because of that range. Did you pick the high end of the casket and the vault? Well, then you're probably on the higher end of that range. Next one there, 9,000. Might be a cremation, but we had the body present for the service, okay? Then after the service, then we cremated and then went to the cemetery. 7 would be like a cremation with a memorial service, okay? So we can do it for less than 8, huh? But yeah, we did the cremation, then maybe a visitation service. We went to the cemetery, maybe did a lunch, after that. 3 might just be cremation, okay? $3,200 is what Wintz charges for just cremation and nothing else, okay? So very simple, but we can kind of get our arms around that. And here's the thing, it's just like when you buy anything else, you get to decide. And this is, again, I think it's so important to do this ahead of time. You should put the money where it matters to you. I just helped a family, I told you about the one that's having the band. I also had families spend a lot of money on the food. The lunch after is a big deal. I had a family spend $2,700 just on the food. Really, really nice. They're gonna do a whole pasta bar. It's gonna be amazing, but that's where they wanna put that. Met others that really like flowers, and that's a big thing. Yes, sir.
I have a question. What do you want all that service, just a cremation?
Yeah, if you just want the cremation, that's $3,200 or so. Yeah.
200?
Yep. Out the door, like my dad would say.
1,500 in,
What's that?
Nebraska, pay 1,500 in Nebraska at a funeral home.
You could pay about $600-700 if you were in Vegas. And I'm not joking around. The prices really do depend on where we live. They really do change. And the more metro area, the larger the population. Yeah, there's different providers that'll
It's a
do.
little small town that did it cheaper than you guys.
There you go. Well, talk to them. Yeah. Oh, they do what they can do. Yeah, it's just like anything else. Why does a can of Coke cost one thing in one town and a different in another? Why is that?
More money.
Maybe there's distribution costs. There's more than just what it is to put that together. But yeah, it's an important thing to know. It is. The other piece of this is the cash advance items, or I would say the other hands that help. And so this is I'm joking here, but like my dad would say, well, what's it going to cost me out the door? Meaning, okay, what are we going to do for flowers? What is the obituary going to cost? How much does it cost to dig the grave? Death certificates. Lunch, how much of that is on us to take care of? Putting the date of death on the monument at the cemetery. All of these things are a real expense that you should know. Again, this is why you want to look at this ahead of time, but some of this is, I think all of it, you should decide. Just like clergy as an example. Around for usually we give a pastor somewhere between $100 to $300. In a round number that you feel good with. I don't know if you pay them more if they talk less, or how you necessarily do that, or pay them more so they say something nice about you maybe, but that's a part of this. What about a piano player or organist? Are we asking them to learn something new, or is it just Amazing Grace and How Great Thou Art, the ones that we kind of know? These are all decisions you can make ahead of time and kind of have that figured out. Every funeral home in the United States has a GPL, or general price list, okay? So you actually can do some comparing. The Federal Trade Commission is the one that governs this. So every funeral home has to itemize all of their charges on exactly the same. So it's really easy for you to kind of look around and say, hey, how much are you charging compared to others, okay? So that way you can know, is there a funeral home that's above or below something else? I can tell you they're right in line with what others are charging. Here's the other thing. I mean, what I've just told you is true. Your funeral could be anywhere from $3,000 to $18,000. That is true, but maybe not that helpful. So one thing that they'll do for you, if you want, is just sit down with them and say, hey, here's what I want. I want a casket, or I want a cremation. I'd like to get together, at the funeral home or at a church or whatever. What's that going to cost me? And let's actually look at those things, have them figure that out for you down to the nickel. So now okay, this is what we're dealing with and how we should address that, okay? Questions on this slide? You had this on your pre-programmed survey, and usually they do it, so. Questions? Yeah.
You have about the cash advanced items.
Yeah.
Is that part of the prepaid funeral idea?
Yeah, usually, yeah, so.
Do a lot of people do that?
They do, yeah, I mean, again, the whole idea, to me, it's just like, it's another piece of the puzzle. Let's figure out, to me, I'm a big proponent of this, obviously, because that's what I do, but to pull together all the death certificate things, all the obituary things, to figure stuff out, to pay for it, to figure out the cemetery stuff. The family's gonna have to do this anyway. If you're willing to, why not? Why not have this done, now, so they're not having to do that. Cash advancings are the same. And that is the part that really varies for people. Because what are you into? Do you like flowers, or is it a lunch thing? I don't want to feed everybody. I've had people tell me, hey, bring your own lunch. I'm not paying for you. Okay, that's fine. Do what you want on that. It should be done your way, okay?
Yes, I would say with that, cash advances too, is we always try to include cash advances in our pre-arrangements and pre-funding, just because that's giving that family the entire picture. Not just the funeral home costs, but what's the Yankton cemetery charge? What's the P&E charge for obituary? What's the lunch gonna be? There's all these other variables that, we've had some people come in and say, well, we went to a different funeral and they were way less, and here's what they did. Well, they didn't price out any of the cash advances. So your cash advances usually add anywhere probably around $2,000 to $3,000 to the funeral. When you're talking about cemetery expenses and death certificates and the ministers and musicians and food and flowers and all those different things. So without that component, your family would have a big surprise at the end if that wasn't planned out. So I would rather have families, get the big picture and then maybe subtract off, rather than, oh, now there's been a death, here's a surprise that we didn't talk about before, so we always include.
Do you include the cash advance in the cost of the funeral?
Yeah.
When you're setting up?
Yeah, typically, so that's just kind of set aside in there as well. So we can get rough ideas of, we're taking some guesses on food and flowers and stuff like that, but, we can't control what the P&D just a few months ago went from $65 to $110, so it just can kind of change like that, but at least we have most of it covered.
So if you set up a prepaid burial and you lived for another 10 years, the expenses would probably be greater at that time, correct?
Yes, almost certainly, right?
Yeah.
Because here we are, if we go 10 years ago, shoot, the paper might have been free. So the way these work, we always get this question too. Yeah, so if I paid now, what happens into the future? So the dollars, they grow, okay? So, and this is true in a lot of states, but South Dakota, you can't put the money and just write a check to Wintz. Hope they're still here. Hope they're honest and good guys. And then when I need it, they help me out. The dollars go into a fund that you own, like a policy, maybe a funeral specific annuity, something that is yours, that you own, that you control, and you can take to any funeral home you want. So you're not beholden to the funeral home. They're good guys, but what if they burn down or go out of business, or you move, okay? This is yours and it can go anywhere. The dollars are growing, okay? But they're not taxed. And really that's done a nice job of acting as an inflation hedge. So as things go up, it does a good job of doing that. Now I'll say this, I've done this 18 years. Back when we started, gosh, we could put aside whatever the costs were and it was growing and be just fine. Have you guys bought groceries in the last 2-3 years? Oh my gosh. I had this guy say, the only way I can make sure my ham sandwiches don't cost anymore is if I make them now. Put them in the freezer, and have it. It's like, it's true. I mean, things are really going up. So now a lot of times what we're doing is, if we think the lunch is gonna be $400, maybe we put in $5. Just let's buffer it a little bit of slush. Any money left over here goes back to the family anyway. So we just want to make sure that that's taken care of and okay for them.
So when you make your agreement to get a prepaid burial and say we're gonna go to Wintz,
Sure.
do they do all the paperwork and,
Yeah.
it's done right there, and then you contract with a bank or something?
We use a life insurance company, so it's a specific life insurance. It's not like a big $50,000 life insurance policy. Really what we do is we do life insurance policies for the amount of the funeral. So whatever casket families select or vaults, or we have a dollar amount of what that would cost today. And then we set up the policy for that amount. And the idea is the interest that it gains offsets the inflation in the future. So that's the whole purpose of setting it up, with a life insurance company. And we write for that company, and Don Mason is our pre-need counselor as well, and he helps with all of that paperwork.
Good question. Yeah.
So that money is, in other words, nursing homes can't get that money?
You are a few slides ahead of me, yes. No, it's perfect. So people do this for a lot of reasons. I mean, on the financial side, of course, it's stressful, money's stressful, so to get that part taken care of for the kids helps, right? The other part is what you're saying though. If we do end up in a nursing home, we do need Medicaid. the state of South Dakota, Nebraska, where I'm from, Minnesota, they look at funeral money that's set aside properly as an exempt asset. It's yours, you own it, but it could never be taken. If you ended up in that position, you've already paid your funeral, that money cannot be taken to pay for your care.
That's as of today. The
It
government
is.
can change the rules.
They can, but this would be unwinding a lot, not that they're beyond, hey man.
They're gonna do a lot of unwinding on Social Security very soon.
Well, yes, that's why I'm paying my taxes, I think is how that works. But no, that's the rules as of now. Even when they changed the gifting laws, there was a transition period.
Yeah.
This is the truth for now. And here's the thing, the government actually doesn't want to pay for your funeral anyway. They want you to pay for it. So it's actually in their best interest to say, hey, go for it. If you do it, they give you that incentive to have the money set aside and not touched. So we end up getting actually referrals from the county to do this when people are going through that process. Hey, go to your funeral home and get this done. Even attorneys, when they're doing estate planning and preservation, it's like, hey, the funeral's an easy thing. I know you're going to need it. It's an expense we know of. Let's get that taken care of. So that's also a protected entity for your family. So, yeah. Good questions. Yeah.
If you start one of these life insurance policies and can't afford to put in like 13,000, can you start it at 5 and then add to it?
Yes. Short answer is yes. And did everybody hear that? If you can't come up with it all at once, can you do other things? Yes. You can do it in pieces, or actually we work with about 6 different companies that do this and give you different options. So doing it all at once or a little at a time or monthly for a year, there's a lot of different ways to do it. To me, it's something I finally learned. The earlier I start, the sooner I'll get done. It's like, I should have figured that out when I was 20, but yeah, no, I actually just did this myself. I'm 44 and I just started my own funeral fund. So if I can do it, you can do it. I bet you. You might be older than me. I bet you. Just saying. So let me keep going here. But thank you for the question. Seriously, that was really good. Cremation. By the way, saw this on the pre-program survey. How many of you are thinking of cremation at this point for yourself? Okay, yeah, no, that's just fine. Not today, but we're thinking about it, right? Okay. Don't have to join a secret society. There are no special handshakes in order to be cremated with Wintz. Now, what am I talking about here? Anybody ever heard of a cremation society? Yeah. No? Okay. Usually the metro areas, they're larger. Actually, they're like a franchise, nationwide franchises of funeral homes that are just trying to get you to work with them, maybe someone in Sioux Falls, instead of working with someone locally. You totally can do it with Winston Ray. They offer cremation, it's just fine. One thing to remember, again, that family viewing prior to the cremation. Super important. Again, no charge for that. Some other funeral homes actually charge for that. I don't understand why, but anyway, they don't. So just consider that to help the family heal with that. The other thing to think about with cremation, a lot of people say, well, what do I do with the ashes? Don't forget that in most cemeteries, they will allow you to do 2 burials in one plot, just as long as one of those burials is cremation, okay? So let's say your folks were buried, I almost guarantee your parents were probably in a casket. That generation, that was very common, right? But let's say you want to be cremated, but you don't have a plot. You probably could be with them. Now, each cemetery decides on the rules here, but this is pretty universally true, that they would allow you to be with mom or dad in that same plot. So you don't have to buy a new plot. You can still do that as well. Or 2 of you, husband and wife, in one plot as well. Totally can do that as well, okay? And some require a vault, some don't. Around here, I don't think many do. Where I am, they do, but no big deal. Other things to think about with cremation is, when do you want to be cremated, okay? There we go. Yes, how about after? Yeah, no. But in South Dakota, a lot of states are this way. There's a 3-day rule. So when a person passes away, the funeral home takes you into their care. That begins a 3-day or 72-hour period of time. Okay? Within that window of time, they either have to bury, embalm, or cremate, or refrigerate. But refrigerate only buys you another couple days, and then you have to either bury, embalm, or cremate. Okay? So something has to happen in that window of time. Okay? So one thing that's possible is maybe we have the viewing first and then cremate after. Okay, another law here. If the body is present for public viewing, the casket is open for anyone to see, then we have to embalm. Okay, so it's a law. So if you ever came to the funeral home, church, whatever, the casket was open, they embalmed. I can promise you that. Okay. So maybe we do that, we cremate after the funeral where the body was present. After the service, we take the casket and then go and do the cremation. Now, this might sound funny. They actually have rental caskets, okay? And don't worry, it doesn't say rental on it or anything. It's a nice oak casket. But no, in this casket, there's actually a container inside there that we stay in and are cremated in. So the foot of the casket comes down, everything slides out, and then you're in a container that's actually flammable. You have to be in something in order to be cremated. The outer oak shell gets reused, but we're in this container and the thing goes into the crematory, is cremated together, okay? So that's a possibility here as well. And for some people, this is kind of a nice middle of the road. If they're thinking cremation, well, hey, at least the family could do the viewing, publicly could do that. Catholic faith encourages, it's not a demand, it's not a requirement, but there is an encouragement that the body be present for the Mass, for them to bless the body with incense and the waters of baptism. So in that tradition, that's the way they would do that. So you're not in purgatory any longer. It's not, nothing like that, but it's another thing to consider with that, okay? Other cremation things, okay? But let's be clear, you don't have to be embalmed to be cremated. No, it's just you could if that was the case. The other thing to think about is your family. Where are they? Not every, again, a generation or two or three ago, everybody lived here, right? Nobody moved. Now everybody moves, right? And so it's not uncommon I'm meeting families and they've got people from New York or Missouri or wherever, and trying to get back here in 3 days may or may not happen. Well, maybe we have a decision to make. Do we allow them to choose embalming if they want that or need that for the viewing prior to the cremation? It's your family, it's your choice, but something to think through here. You totally can make your own urn, okay? No trouble. We are all 220 cubic inches at that point, okay? I am mostly water and bacon when it all comes down to it, okay? So that's about a box like this. So I've had people make their own. That's totally fine. You can do that. Most of the time, people take ashes and they bury them, okay? Let me ask you this. Could I scatter them if I wanted?
Not without permission.
Yes, correct. Yeah, so really, scattering ashes at worst, it's littering, but the question is, do you have permission to scatter it on that land? And chances are you don't. I mean, even if you own the place, fine. But then when the kids sell the place and you're buried in the backyard, they have to disclose that. And believe it or not, there have been lawsuits in our country where people didn't disclose that grandma was buried in the backyard, and then they sold the house, and then the new people found it, and then they sued the selling family. It's silly, but it's happened. So most of the time, though, no, we still in the Midwest, we still go and be buried in a cemetery. There are some different things you can do with cremated remains. This first one is a disc urn. It's made of pressed cotton, where the ashes are put in that. Then it floats on the water for a little bit, absorbs the water, goes down. We're on the lake, let's say, and then disintegrates. It's an eco-friendly way to say goodbye. They make a big one and then like littler ones about the size of my hand. So we can all go out on the pontoon and do this and cheers, to that person. I know we've heard of this. There really is a company in Illinois that can take your ashes, pressurize them, and then change them into a diamond, believe it or not. A little different, but another option. And then jewelry, and then jewelry as well. Ashes can be put into the jewelry. I can tell by the look at some of your faces, you're like, that's never gonna happen. That's okay. I'm just showing you what's out there. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? Any other questions on cremation here? Okay, I'll keep going here. Veterans, do we have any veterans here now? Okay, awesome, perfect. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you. I still think, does America have our warts? You bet, but I still think we got the best thing going on planet Earth. So thank you for that. Here is a list of burial benefits available to honorably discharged veterans. Okay, first, the flag and honor guard. They'll do the honors either at the cemetery. I've seen them at the funeral home and at the church though too. If the cemetery is far away and this way everyone can participate, they'll do that. They fold the flag out in a triangle, present it to the family. It's really nice, but they can do that, play the taps, have the gun volley. Headstone or marker. Usually I see it's a 2 foot by 1 foot bronze marker. It can be laid flat in the ground, or they can drill holes and place it into the back of an upright monument. So that's available as well. That's free. Little cost to set it, but not much. Presidential Memorial Certificate. It's a thank you signed by the current president in office, thanking the family for the veterans' service. We always joke, if you don't like the current president in office, you'll have to wait to die until there's one you do like, so you get their signature. Anyway, just joking. State and national cemeteries. Steve, what are the state and national cemeteries around here for veterans?
Sturgis, Black Hills National is the national cemetery. But then, I don't know if you've heard the state veterans cemeteries up in Sioux Falls, so on the outskirts of Sioux Falls. So those are the two main ones here. So I think there's some in Nebraska, but any national cemeteries as far as South Dakota, it's just Black Hills National, out in Sturgis. But I've been out to that state cemetery, it's really neat out there. They need to pave the roads going out there, but I think they'll get to that eventually. But it is a neat area that they have and a nice thing for our South Dakota veterans for sure. That don't have to go all the way to the other side of the state, to be in a veterans cemetery.
Sure. Perfect. Monetary things, it's like under promise, over deliver. Typically, what my experience has been, the veteran would have to die from a service-connected disability. So if they didn't die from a service-connected disability, there's probably no money for that person. We always encourage, hey, apply for things. Usually it's a dollar amount that would come later, much later everything's over. So one thing to think about. But here's the thing, if the veteran wants any of these things, the DD 214, veteran discharge paper, okay? Do you know where yours is? Okay, if you can get it, you make a copy or bring it into the funeral home, they'll make a copy, give it right back to you. They have to have that in order to get any of these benefits for your family. So totally deserve it. And you decide. I've had veterans that want all of this. And I've had veterans that's like, hey, just give me a flag. That's really all I want. I'm proud to serve, but for me, that's all I want. Perfect. Let's get that for you. You totally deserve that. Okay? Keep going here. Is it legal? That's always a fun question, right? Anybody ever go 5 miles over the speed limit? Today? Did you go 5? Yeah, me too. Is it legal to scatter? No, most people do it and they just make it very quiet and they just do it quietly. People do it in parks and rivers all the time, I can tell you. They just make it real quiet and don't make a big deal out of it. You probably can get away with it just like going 5 miles over the speed limit. By law, do I have to have a vault at the cemetery? Is it a state law? Tricky, no, it's actually a cemetery decision. Each cemetery has bylaws. And again, around here, pretty much all of them require one for a casket. Not many do for urns, but we always need to check, okay? How about by law, do I have to have an obituary in the paper? No, the legal things are foreclosures or probate, those things we have to do. But no, by law, you do not have to put this on there. By law, do you have to put it on Facebook? No, your call. And then what about your file, okay? By law, your file is yours. So again, this gets back into that transferability. Just today, I had a lady move from my area about 2 hours to the west of us, to be closer to family. All her plans, her whole file are going to be transferred to that funeral home. So I just had her sign a little thing to transfer it, and it all goes. So all the plans, all the money are hers, and it goes with her. And I think this is going to be more important as we get older, only because our society is such where, let's say you're here, the kids are in Sioux Falls, or the kids are in Omaha or whatever, and you're 99, you don't have your marbles. They may move you whether you know it or not, okay, to be close to them. That's okay. This would go with you. Again, all the plans, all the money are yours. Go with you that way, okay? Questions? Yeah?
How about if you want them to come back home?
Yeah, no problem.
Leave it for their
Yes,
home and home?
for sure, yeah.
Most families, if they have that situation where they've gone to a different community just for a year or two, or, things like that, they're gonna have all their services back here. They usually would just leave everything with us, and then when something would happen, say, in Colorado or whatever, they would still just call us, and then we would take care of all the plans to get you back here. So rather than involving 2 funerals, you're gonna kind of get double costs the more funeral homes you involve. Funeral homes work with each other and kind of can coordinate between each other on helping each other out to do those services.
Yeah, good question. Funeral trusts, we're 6 out of 8 here. I don't know if I'm gonna go 3 hours tonight. I might only go 1 or 2, I see here. But yeah, a lot of you marked this on your pre-program. We talked a little bit about this, but again, you don't have to prepay to pre-plan, okay? Don't let the money get in the way. we're all gonna need a funeral someday. Again, the more you do, the more it'll help. But for a lot of people, it does make sense to pay for those things. Again, when you do pay, you're not gonna make a check out to the funeral home. Does not work that way. Okay, you're not giving it to them. You're just setting it aside in a fund that's yours for that purpose. Yeah, not giving it to the funeral home. You know, a lot of times it's a policy, something with a trust agreement that makes it a protected entity if you did end up in a facility, into a nursing home, okay? But yeah, the money's always yours. It does not belong to them. In fact, what they do then, someday, you know, let's say monies have been set aside. Now, you sit down with Steve someday, the family does, and before anything gets spent, we go through it all one more time. Okay, this is what mom picked. Boom, 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 here's everything. Here's what's in the fund. Is this okay? With your permission, he then cuts a check to the pastor, the organist, the vocalist, you know, the newspaper, just does all this on the family's behalf. So they're not running around doing it. Okay, it's again, they've got, to me, it's almost like a sacred time. They need to be together, laugh, remember, maybe write a eulogy, you know, thinking about those things. It's like, I want them thinking about that. I don't want them worried about, you know, did somebody pay the caterer? Let Steve do it. That's what you pay him for. So again, having that done takes care
So
of
if there is money left over,
yeah,
that would go into the estate, I'm assuming? or-
typically.
And the funeral home would write that check out to that estate
Or the spouse. Yeah.
or the spouse?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you don't have to claim any taxes on that,
Correct.
or do you?
No, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you've got the government on your mind today. Yeah. No,
That's why I moved to South Dakota.
yeah. I live in Minnesota.
No state tax.
Yeah, no, believe me. No, you're exactly right. So the dollars, they grow income tax free, but then, yeah, it's paid out then to the estate and that's income tax free as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
I don't know if you're gonna get to this in the next slide, but the only kind of difference in that is if you happen to be on Medicaid, you know, with the nursing home. So we can shelter your funds from Medicaid, but if there is anything left over, as long as it's, you know, we can, usually families want us to maybe give a little more to the church or something like that. But anything that's not used for a funeral expense would then be, go back to the Department of Recovery, you know, to Medicaid. So that's the only thing. So they're gonna get their money before or after, you know, so it just kind of depends on what families wanna do. If they wanna shelter a little bit more and then have them recover it at the back end, you know, that's what we see a lot of families do. But you're probably gonna get to
No,
that.
it's a nuance, but you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Death and taxes, man, we're hitting it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. So, yep. Other things here, you know, again, the dollars are growing income tax free, extra money back to the estate, any funeral home, we talked about this. And also the dollars are protected and reinsured. So just like the FDIC at the bank, you know, if a bank ever had a problem, there's a reinsurance so we won't lose our money. Same thing with these financial institutions. There's a backing of those too, so your dollars are protected. But it's just like anything else. If it's a specially treated fund, it will be treated specially by our state. They'll leave it alone. They won't count it as an asset. It won't go through probate. You know, it's for that purpose and takes care of that one thing, okay? On this, and you touched on this, but again, some people just pay this all at once. Other people do a little at a time, or pieces, or monthly, or whatever. It's a totally funeral home joke, but we say you should do what you can do, but I don't want it to kill you. So, you know, again, just, you know, making it manageable is a real thing, okay? Unforeseen things, I'm on number 7, okay? We've kind of been touching on this, but what do you think is the biggest financial threat that we face when we get older? What would you guess?
Nursing.
Yes, bingo. What does it cost to live in a nursing home for a month? What would you think the average is in this area?
My mother is paying 20
Oh my gosh.
in Minnesota.
Oh my
But she's
gosh.
in memory care too.
Wow.
Out at Majestic Bluffs, it's 11,600.
Oh, man. Wow. I thought.
11,600.
Yeah, I was just saw it out there.
Yeah.
But that gets you the physical therapy, everybody coming into your room.
Yep. Oh my goodness. Wow. That's the most I've ever heard. 20 is, I've had talked to people that are paying 16 before where I'm from, but yikes. And it is, just like you're saying, it's what are they doing for you? The more they're doing for you, the more it's going to be. Average for skilled care is right about 9,200, which is still a big number. by the way, when you do the math, that's over $100,000 a year. So, it's a big problem, and Medicare is not gonna help you. I think you get help from Medicare if you're on therapy up to 100 days, if the moon is full. Otherwise, you're kind of on your own. So, it's a real problem. Which is why I do this quiz, okay? This is gonna help you guys a lot, okay? Question number 1, just answer this honestly, okay? I want you to raise your hand if you're gonna live in a nursing home someday. Nobody. Wow, okay, well, this is gonna be really good, all right. Question number 2, I want you to raise your hand if you think the guy or the gal next to you will end up in a nursing home. Oh, yeah. Instead of putting him in there. Yeah, right? Well, and here's the thing, I mean, I try to put myself in that position. Yeah, sorry, I don't have $9,200 extra in my budget. Are you kidding me? No, most of us don't. And so, yeah, we do end up on the county. We pay our taxes. This is a taxpayer-funded system. And so you never hear a story of grandma got kicked out of the nursing home because she couldn't pay. Nope, everybody's gonna be taken care of, but you gotta qualify. And the way you qualify, you gotta be down to $2,000 as a single person. But if you're married, it's like 150, I'm just using round numbers, but right about 150 between the two of you. And you can't just give away all your money yesterday and go on the county tomorrow, right? There's a full 5-year look back period on gifts. So again, take some planning, take some thought. They're talking about it.
That's what I had heard.
Nothing for sure yet, but yeah, they're talking about that. Yes, sir. So if, let's say, like I'm married, so let's say I have a stroke, I end up in a nursing home, the county will step in when me and my wife are down to about 152,000. I'm using round numbers, but I can have 2, she can have 150, and we go on Medicaid, okay?
$150?
$152,000 between the two of us. If I'm just an individual, like, I'm assuming she's at home, doesn't need the care, okay? She's at home, she can have 150, because they're not gonna try to impoverish her, because then she's gonna need the help from the county right away too. But she can have 150. There's a list, 1 car, the house, in income, personal property is okay. This is like a seminar all by itself, but ultimately there's a list to make sure that she's okay. But if I need the care, that's it. I gotta be down to 2, okay, between the two of us.
Are you talking 150,000 including the house?
The house is not included in that number.
Or vehicle?
Yeah, so let's say 150 in the bank, and a house, and a car. That's what I can have and get this assistance as well, okay? I know it's super depressing, but that's just the truth, all right? Other things, oh boy, it's your family. Now I'm gonna sound like my dad again, but sometimes he would say, it seems like it's getting worse out there. And I think sometimes maybe that's true. I don't know if I'm just getting more jaded or pessimistic in my life, but it seems like it, and it's the family stuff. We're on social media, you're on Facebook. You wanna have a fight? Let's say, I like Trump, or I like Biden. I think you should get vaccinated. I don't think you should get vaccinated. Let's have a big fight about it, okay? Let's do that online, and then tell you what, now we'll have someone pass away, and we'll get those people who don't agree on anything, we'll get them in a nice tight room, and now they gotta work it all out. It's ugly, okay? I've seen and heard families fighting and yelling at each other. You were never there for dad. Why didn't you love mom? Just really gross accusations. Because here we are, we've caught the family at probably the worst day of their life. And now all this stress and all this stuff that's been boiling over, now it comes to a head, okay? You got the farm and all I got was the dishes, and that's not fair, and you're a big dork and mom loved you best and I don't know why. Anyway, all this stuff comes out. And right now, mom and dad, you're the center of it all. You're the center of the family. So what you say goes. But we take you out of that. Now they've got to relate to each other differently in a new way. And now there's a new center of influence, a new center of power in the family. Who decides now what is equal and fair? Who invites everybody over for Christmas and Thanksgiving, right? It's all changed. It's all different now. And that can really, really rock a family. And different financial circumstances can really affect people too. I'll just say this. I've had families where nothing was planned. And I can tell you true life stories. Nothing was planned. Nothing was figured out. They have no available dollars when they walk in the door. They just lost someone that they love. And now the funeral's, whatever, $7,000, $9,000, and they don't have it. What do? Okay? They look at their siblings. Well, got 3 kids, and It's 9,000. Well, do you have 3,000? Do you have 3,000? Do I have 3,000 to pay for this? It's a real stressor. It's a real thing. So again, it's not about, we're not after your money, but this is a big deal. So whatever you're gonna do, get it figured out so it's there. It's gonna be taken care of regardless of what happens to you between now and then, whether you hit the nursing home or not. This is a real thing that, again, they're willing to work with you and they're good people at the funeral home, but the bill is the bill, right? It's still coming due. So whatever you're gonna do, get that part figured out. Because yeah, if you called your kids and said, hey, in 3 days, I'm gonna need 10 grand. Huh. What are they gonna say? I would laugh. That's exactly what I would do. Like, yeah, good for you. What am I supposed to do? Buy a lottery ticket? I mean, come on. You know, so it's a real stressor. It's a real thing. My number 8 here, okay? So we've been talking about, if I did end up in a facility, if I did need Medicaid, there are components here that the county will look at to see if a funeral fund that you own is exempt or not. Okay, here's the 4 things that they're gonna look at. First, you have to have a written contract with your preferred funeral provider. Okay, this means you said, I want to select you as my funeral home provider. We're saying, yeah, you so choose us at the time. Okay. Secondly, you have to have a specific itemized statement of goods and services. This means you actually pick things out. You picked out that casket or that urn, that vault. We really itemized this thing, dollar for dollar and came up with an amount. Okay. Third, it's got to be irrevocable, which is just a fancy word meaning it's not changeable. It's just for that purpose. Irrevocable means I can't get at it anymore. The dollars are put in here. I cannot access them now until I pass away. This is part of what makes it so that the nursing home can't get at it. Not that they're trying to get at it, but nobody can get at those dollars until I pass away. It's irrevocable, okay? And then lastly, the beneficiary designation has to be just like this. Any funeral home, as their interest may appear, can't be Wintz. They can't be the beneficiary. Okay, you're not related to Wintz. It's got to say any funeral home, because again, it's got to be transferable to any funeral home that you choose. Contingent would be the estate, okay? So think of these as like 4 links in a chain. You got to have all 4 to make it a protected entity. If you got 2 out of the 4, the county's going to say, this is not right. We're going to count it as an asset unless you can fix it or cash it in or figure it out, okay? So again, to me, it's just one more thing where I want to know before I ever get in that position, is what I have going to work or not? I just want to know that now. So that way I can at least make a decision, okay? Questions on this one? Okay. I feel like I'm depressing everybody. I don't think I'm going to do any better when I transition into talking about funeral plan. Yeah, do you have a question?
Do you have to even have like the marker and stuff all picked out and paid for and stuff too as part of that previous slide?
You don't have to, but boy, I mean, that's one more thing. And markers, I don't know, I usually tell markers can cost like 1,000 to 8,000. So that's a real number too, So size and color and font, and is it flat? Is it a pillow? Is it slanted? Is it upright? Are all the sides smooth? Are they rough? I mean, there's so many different components to that. So to me, it's a project all by itself. I usually tell people, let's figure out your funeral, then figure out the cemetery, then figure out the marker, because it's in that order that you'll use them and in that order that you should probably get it done, So, yeah.
A lot of people will buy their markers ahead of time and have them in the cemetery if they know. Usually the engraving the final date is a cost that would be in the future that we would put on a pre-arrangement or something like that. But a lot of people don't like their name sitting in the cemetery either, so they wait for that, and it's like, I don't want that spot waiting for me, so. But it's just something that can be done ahead of time. It's whatever families want to do. We just give them their option.
For sure, yeah. At this point, I want to touch on this planning guide. It's just a book that we use, and just think of, as I'm talking through it, think about your own funeral, kind of how you want your own things to go, and kind of apply that to this book. But we use this as a tool, and funeral homes do this, where they collect all this, and then we see the family walk in. It does save them the time of figuring all this stuff out. It does save them the money because we pick these things out. It does save the hardship of like, what do we do? How do we pull all this together? Mentally, it's really draining. There really is a thing called grief brain. Your brain actually doesn't work as well when you're under stress and trauma. So this will hopefully help. So last page in the book, place for personal remarks. Over the years, I've had, it's mostly ladies that'll do this, but they actually do a handwritten letter to each of the kids. I had this one, a handwritten note to all 4 of her kids and just said, hey, I love you. appreciate you. I love the way you're raising the kids. Hold on to integrity, hold on to the things that we believe. Just really cool stuff. And someday we'll be sitting with them and like, hey, here's a letter from mom. I mean, it's cool. If you didn't think you could get the last word on somebody, you probably can here, one way or another. Social Security and veterans benefits. So Social Security pays out a one-time death benefit of $255 to a surviving spouse, okay? So when I die, my wife gets $255. When she dies, the kids do not get $255. It's a spousal benefit. It does not automatically come. You actually have to apply for it. So here's a list of things needed to apply for that. Veterans benefits, I did touch on that, but again, that discharge paper would be really helpful to have that on file. How to make a will, preserving and probating a will. I'm not an attorney, but I'll say this, the will is a really bad place to put your funeral plans, because when is the will usually read? After it's all over, yes. And I've seen people read it, it's like, we did the wrong thing for the funeral. Oh no, and I've seen that firsthand. It's like, oh gosh, what do we do? Well, put it on file at the funeral home. Don't put this in your will. Next part here, personal papers, documents, and insurance information. Anybody ever had to be the executor of an estate before? Okay, yeah, well then on average, I saw this the other day, it takes 18 months from the date of death to when that estate is totally done, on average. Just depends on how organized you are and how well you've got things put together. But it's figuring all this stuff out. Where are the deeds, titles, just notes, bank accounts, credit cards, safety deposit box. All this stuff has to be gone through. Is there a beneficiary? Who does it go to? Are we going through probate, or is there a trust? There's a lot. Might have to file taxes even though you died. I mean, there's a lot to it. So we're just trying to identify, where is everything, okay? Is there that green magic metal box underneath the desk that's got everything important, or where is that for you? I don't want to know, but somebody needs to know. So that'll help. And then the middle part of the book. And I think this is, I don't know, the meat and potatoes, I guess, of your plan. But it says here, please contact the funeral home listed below to conduct our final arrangements. You can put Wintz, their name, address, and phone number. It says to eliminate burden and hardship for my loved ones, I've pre-arranged my funeral and then pre-funded my funeral check. And now we start to think of your own, okay? Do we do a viewing or visitation? Do we do it the night before? Do we do it all in one day at a service for an hour or two? How long do you think we should do that? The location of the ceremony. Is it at the funeral home, gravesite, church, the Legion? I've done them at the hog farm. I mean, we've done them everywhere, okay? Because they were hog farmers, right? It kind of made sense. But, where does it make sense for you? Let's figure that out, okay? Type of ceremony, be it traditional or cremation, or both. Where the body is present, we rent that casket and then cremate. Again, it's another option there. Special ceremony, lodge rites, military. If you're Catholic, would you want a rosary prayed? Again, these are all different, pieces, or maybe you're part of a different group. I know there's a nurse, there's a poem. Why can't I think of her name? Florence Nightingale, there we go. Ooh, I don't know how to pull that. There's a special poem that they read, depending on your profession. A lot of times we have those as well. Type of casket or urn, again, concrete or steel or wood or metal for the vault and the urn and the casket. All these things are options, but choices that you should make. Pallbearers, probably put that in pencil because things can change, right? People move or move on, right? Floral request, what's your favorite flower? How about songs? Anybody ever heard the song, How Great Thou Art? I have two. If that's your favorite, let's do it. If you want something different, let's do that, okay? Who gets your wedding ring? I don't know, but I don't want to have a fight. You got 2 daughters and you got 1 ring, okay? Oh, I want you to decide, okay? The other one that I'm running into a little bit lately, what if you were married before, but you're not now, and you don't like that person anymore, okay? In your obituary, do we list them or not? I don't care, but your kids are gonna feel a weird loyalty to both, and what do you say and what don't you say? I don't care, I don't wanna have a fight, I want you to lead, okay? You get to say, no mention whatsoever, or yeah, they got married and later divorced. Whatever, it's your call, it's awkward. You know what I mean? So please lead the way, otherwise the kids are in a weird spot, or if we're married in a second marriage, is that spouse supposed to chime in? They better not, because that can get, it can feel weird. Anyway, so one more thing. Cemetery marker, anyway, I could go on and on. All these decisions need to be made. help them out, okay? Next page, personal friends and relatives. One is just creating an accurate obituary, right names, right spellings, how do we want to say things? Also, if we can, we're collecting email addresses a lot more now. Let's say we type up a rough draft of the obituary at the time, we email out a copy so we can all kind of collaborate on that and work it together. I did see someone with asking about obituary writing. I'm having more people write their own now than ever before because they want to say what they want to say, and they want to kind of come from their voice. I'm also having people do maybe a smaller one in the paper and a larger one on the funeral home website just to save some dollars. I've seen that too. AI is the thing too. I don't know if you guys are using that much. Some funeral homes are starting to. You can kind of plug in a little bit and it'll spit out, here's an obituary that's kind of got a country theme to it. And so it's weird, but it'll come. It's not perfect. It still needs to be edited, but it produces things quickly. So we're starting to look at some of those things as well. Okay. And then last part of the book, personal information, everything that's needed for the death certificate. So full legal name, where were you born, how many years of school you went through, parents' names, where they were born, occupation over the years. Some of this stuff is South Dakota specific, some of it's Minnesota. Depending on where you passed away, each state's a little bit differently, but we need to collect all that information. Marital status, military information, and then on my death, please notify. Who is that one person that will probably be in charge at that point? We call them the legal next of kin with the right to control the final disposition. Do you have a power of attorney after you die? You don't, right? A lot of you know that. Yep. So power of attorney ends upon death. So now who's in charge? Well, we're looking for that person to be that person in charge. There's a note that that's in the front of this book. I think it kind of recaps and says what we're trying to say tonight. So it says this: to my dear loved ones, I prepared this guide for you and those I care about. Inside you'll find a brief overview of my life, a listing of those most dear to me, and some of my most precious memories. For your peace of mind as well as my own, I have included wishes for my funeral service, along with other vital information you will need at the time of my death. I completed this guide with much love and foresight. My desire is to lessen the burdens you will have at my time of passing, so you can celebrate our life together. And a place for you to sign and date here as well. On your, I think you got a sheet, an evaluation form on there. I think Steve gave those out. If you like one, this is something Wintz is going to do for anybody who comes, whether you use them as a funeral home or not. Okay. These books are available, and they want to give them to you. So easy enough. Jot your name down. If you're a couple, write down that you need two, because each of you should have your own. And what will happen is either Steve or Don, who you haven't met, they'll touch base with you, give you a call. Happy to sit with you, maybe chat a little bit, only because you're not planning funerals every day. And it wouldn't hurt just to talk a little bit and say, hey, what would mine be? Maybe ask them about the pricing, say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I have cremation, I'm going to be buried over at such and such cemetery. How much would that be? Have them walk you through that and just start to get a sense of what yours would be. But to me, it's a good first step to kind of get your ducks in a row on this difficult, but okay, a topic here. Yeah.
You said the power of attorney is on death.
Yeah.
What's the durable power of attorney?
Durable attorney, I think, not an attorney, but I think that gets into if I'm incapacitated or not.
Okay.
So I think that has to do with it only kicks in if a doctor says I have a stroke or I can't handle my business. Like right now, I have a power of attorney. My wife is my power of attorney right now, and I am hers. Now, as you can tell, I'm really smart and really sharp. Kidding. Nobody, yeah, okay. But she could take care of my stuff right now. And it's weird, I think we're joint on everything except the cable bill. They won't talk to her. They'll talk to me, but well, she could use the power of attorney and talk to the cable company and get that figured out. So if I had a stroke, that comes into more of an issue.
Okay, and the medical power of attorney, that's just for medical things.
It is, that term has really been replaced with healthcare directive. That's really what they call it now.
Oh, healthcare directives.
Yep.
Okay.
Those you can typically find. I know in our state, there's, you can get them for free online.
Okay. And what's the thing, I had I was kind of in charge of a brother-in-law that passed away. Anyway, what is there after they die I forget, is there anything,
Well, executor of your estate
oh, maybe that's.
or
what it was.
personal representative of your will. That's usually after the fact, that's
Oh,
the term or the title. And that's usually asset related. It's my stuff, I'm trying to get it to whoever.
As far as funeral homes, the law that's in the book in South Dakota is, it's the legal next of kin, and it's all of them. So if you have 5 children, it's all of your children, you know, not the oldest, not the youngest,
Yeah.
not who you love the most, it's all of them together.
that's
So
the legal.
name of them.
you can designate one, you know, in your pre-arrangement, and actually there's affidavits that we've done, you know, that specifically name someone that's in charge of all the decisions. There's ways to take care.
You can have one name and then written in there, if something happens to him, then this one is named.
Sure.
Correct. Yeah, you can have all of that information down with the funeral home. If you really want to get the legal, most of it's dealing with cremation. You know, this is the person that can sign the cremation authorization because, and you can sign your cremation authorization ahead of time, you know, yourself, you can do that. But that's really getting into, more legalities of this is the person that we're gonna listen to. If we had it in your file that Bob's in charge, it's like, okay, Bob's in charge, you know, so, that's kind of how that works. But legally speaking, it is all of the children together that makes decisions, yeah, unless specifically.
I'm sorry, do you need to have a legal executor or a will in order for your children to go ahead with your decision?
No, it's a good idea to have that stuff in place. As far as the funeral home goes, it really doesn't matter to us, legally, who's the executor, who's the, what was the other one?
Personal rep of the
Personal
will.
rep,
Yeah.
yeah. According to the law, it doesn't matter, you know,
And
so.
it doesn't have to be a legal thing. I mean, if we say we want our son to be our executor, we don't need to go to an attorney that says he's the executor for.
I don't know that question.
Now, again, we are not attorneys.
Yeah.
We only play them on TV, but so
Yeah.
most states, and I'll just say this is the way Minnesota does. I think South Dakota is similar to, let's say I didn't do any of my legal documents. I already have by state statute, many of these things put together. I have a line of authority, I have a line of beneficiary. And so like if I never did anything, my wife would be next, then my kids, then I think my parents, then I think my siblings. So there's kind of a line of those that would be in charge or those who would get my stuff. Okay, you'd have to go through a probate process, but so there's already kind of something in place. If I want something different than that, if I want to avoid going through the courts for probate, then I would probably, get a trust, get something like that put together. Or I want that kid to do it, not that kid. Well, then it'd make sense to appoint someone in a will to do that. Yeah, so. Good questions. I think there's one, isn't there an estate planning one coming up one of these months? So stay tuned, come to that as well. I'm almost done. I don't think I'm gonna go 3 hours. I really don't think so. Some of you marked this on your program survey too, death away from home. So we always get the question, what would happen if I died away from home? Okay. Easy answer is don't do that. Just die. It's the last of my funeral jokes here. So no, easy answer is, actually Steve talked about this earlier. Call your funeral home first. Okay. Call Steve or Paul first. To help you remember E.T., the movie? Remember what he was trying to do? Phone home. Yes, exactly right. So you want to call home first because what will happen then, Steve will hire that funeral home there for the day. And so their charges will still be more, but it's going to get absorbed a lot into Wintz's charges. And there are courtesy rates funeral home to funeral home. Think of it like wholesale where you're going to pay retail. Okay, so this will save you a little bit that way. To move a person, so let's say a person passed away in Arizona and now they got to get back here. To move a person, you either need to be embalmed there and shipped back or cremated there and shipped back. So all those decisions have to be made for that to move forward, okay? So obviously there's cost that would go with that depending on that funeral home and how far away you are. So the other answer here is this is our one advertisement of the day, but there is a travel protection plan available through the funeral home. One-time fee of $495. And it pays for all those expenses to get you from wherever you were in the world back to Yankton, okay? We've had this happen. So let's say, just as an example, I had it happen. There, a husband and wife, they were wintering in Florida, actually. She passed away down there. This plan kicked in. It paid for that funeral home there. They have a service charge. It paid for embalming. because to move, to ship her back, you'd have to embalm. Paid for an airline casket, it's like a specialized shipping container. Paid to get her to Miami, paid for the flight from Miami to Omaha, and then paid for the funeral to go and get her and bring her back. So all told, $495, kicks in when you're 75 miles away from home or more. Yes, sir.
Is that only for continental, United States?
Intergalactic. No, it's, yeah, anywhere in the world.
Well, if you're on Mars, you come get us.
Might take a little bit.
Yeah.
I say my father passed away on vacation,
Yeah,
and he was on a ship.
yes.
He got to Mexico,
Yep,
they wouldn't even take him off the boat. They
Yeah.
gave him back,
sure.
and we always joked about that. The Navy man, so we had to get him.
There you go. Yeah. No,
We
we
had it all the way back to the United States.
right. No, and we've had them international, when it is international, like Mexico as an example. The company that does this, that we work with, they do interpreter services. They work with the American consulate there. There's a lot more that needs to happen, but again, embalming or cremating there, but they just do it. They pay for it all. The funeral home here would be the receiving funeral home. So again, coordinating flights and when are we supposed to go and take that person back into our care, but it's just done. Yeah.
But he cremation.
Sure.
Thing is, the people, I don't know, it was United, it was a big cremation company.
Okay.
And they actually went down to Mexico, but they couldn't get the body. They still had to come back to the United States because of so many different papers that had to be signed.
Could be, yeah, jurisdictions and,
Yeah.
no, it is. Once it crosses a border, it becomes a real issue.
Another world.
Yeah, but again, if you do some kind of traveling, this is not a bad idea, but
Is
if
that every time you travel?
no, pay it once and you're done for life.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the name of that?
It's called our travel plan. Sorry, I'm just being funny. Talk to Steve or Don. They'll give you some information on that. You just get it through the funeral home with them. Sorry, I was just being a joke. But no, really, that's what we call it, is the travel plan. That's what they do. So, yeah.
On a little different note, something I've noticed on a lot of funerals now is that they'll have a funeral at the church and then a meal or something. And then the burial will actually be later, with just say private family. I would assume that would be an additional expense, am I correct, or not necessarily?
Not
Sometimes just for
necessarily.
convenience, I think.
Yeah. It just kind of depends on what that family wants to do. Did they already pay for it? We're just gonna plan to do a burial at a later date, and then when that time comes, we've already, been paid for that service. Some just want to take care of it later. You just really leave it up to the families, That's usually more when there's a cremation, that's happened, and then maybe some of the kids couldn't come back, or it's in the middle of winter and they wanna wait till spring to do a burial or something like that. With a casket, obviously, that's usually going right away. I always kind of caution families, because they're like, well, if we go to the cemetery first and then come back to lunch, we're gonna lose a lot of people, which is true, but if you go to your lunch, now we have to have a specific time of how long you can visit. And to me, the cemetery has concluded kind of the service aspect of things. And now we get to go to the lunch and have fellowship and get kind of built back up, rather than now we have to cut off the visiting to go, we're still not done with the service part, So we always, unless you're gonna be buried in, Sioux Falls or outside of town, very far, Gayville, we usually would have lunch first and then burial out there. But, if it's in town, usually it's best to have all the services conducted first and then have that fellowship time to be with friends and share those memories and things like that. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
People can really relax, it's done, so, yeah. Well, someday we're all coming back to a get together. The next time you come to the library, you probably won't hear about funerals, is my guess. But on that day, we won't care, we hopefully will be in a much better place. But for somebody else, it is a tough day, for a lot of people, it's the worst day of their life. Something I hope we can agree on. I saw this the other day. Grief is the form that love takes when someone that you love has died, okay? That's my mom. It's a couple of years ago now that she passed away. But the thing that hit me the most is just like, right, that moment, I can never ask her again. My whole life, I know this is painfully obvious, but it never hit me until then. It's like, ever since I was born, I could always ask her anything. I always could. And now, right now, I can never ask her again. It's just like, that stark, I don't know, it just took me a while to do that. The other kind of odd thing, I thought this was, I've worked at the funeral home, like I say, 18 years. I think I've seen everything. I really stood by the casket. People would come, people would go. I stuck there for like most of the visitation. And I just needed to. I just kind of pray, kind of talk to mom in your own head and heart, and that's what I needed. I would never have guessed that. I don't think we will know what we're going to need until we're kind of sitting there. So this just helps them, I think, to give them every option, I think is good. So what I don't want you to do is freak out, because I know this is a lot, and I know we purposely throw a lot at you just to get you thinking, and hopefully looking at some of these things ahead of time. What I want you to do is just be thoughtful. Take your time, look at these things. One thing I have learned too, the easiest thing in the whole wide world to do about this is nothing. Like, oh, that was cool. I had some coffee, had a nice cookie, and put my head in the sand again. You got some momentum, you're thinking about this, follow through, make some plans. To me, this is something, let's take a really good hard look at this once. Make your decisions and then go live your life. Know that this is there to help your family through a tough time, okay? I'm done. Do you guys have any other questions?